Writing stories is hard, but what I personally think is even harder than writing is planning. Because planning is hard. Planning stories is really hard, but you knew that, it's in the title. I have written 2 novels, Sorry About Me and Not My Dream Diary. I've also written a third, but you know, I haven't released it yet. I haven't even announced the title yet. But the whole thing about me thinking that writing is in a way easier than planning, it has a reason. Basically, whenever I wrote Sorry About Me, I planned a little bit. I had a basic idea of where I wanted the story to go. I had some kind of outline, but it wasn't that difficult. I knew what I wanted the characters to go through. And as I was writing, it was more and more that things just kind of happened because it made sense for the characters. It made sense for where they were. It made sense for who they were. So I didn't have to plan too much. I did outline for this story, but not as much as you would expect from something like Harry Potter. I don't know if I've ever shown you guys this shelf, but I'm a Harry Potter fan. I really like Harry Potter. I have all the books in 2 languages and then some extra books. I think they're great. And Harry Potter is of course one of, if not the most famous franchise in the world. And it is also known that while the writer is an absolute idiot, the story was apparently, most of it was already known to J.K. Rowling from the very first book, which I don't know if that's actually true, but that is what she said. So let's just accept that for what it is. So what I mean by that is some of the most important plot points had been planned way before the final book was written. I think that is incredible. I think that is so difficult. In case you don't know, there are multiple ways to write. Of course there are. You have like pantsers and you have outliners. I think they are the official terms. What do I know? People say that Stephen King, for example, is a pantser, and like I said, J.K. Rowling is a planner. Or an outliner, whatever I said. I think I said outliner, doesn't matter. Basically, what that means is that Stephen King has an idea for a story, he has characters, and he writes. He writes, and he has the characters and the world figure out itself. He does not outline much, if anything. And J.K. Rowling outlines every single thing for the story. The entire direction the story goes, every detail is worked out in some kind of outline. People have entire Excel sheets to help them make sure that the story is right. That is wild. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm just saying that I personally find planning very difficult. Like I said, with my book Sorry About Me, I did some planning, but not a lot of it, and I kind of found my way. But with Not My Dream Diary, I didn't plan really anything. I knew my characters, I knew what situation she was in, and how she kind of got there. I knew 2 things. I knew she had a dream, and I knew that that dream would become a reality to some degree. And then I just started writing. I just went, okay, well, I have these characters. How does she get there? And it just kind of happened. That doesn't always work. That's not always a great way to go about it, but it worked for me. At some point, you find things in your story as you're writing that you think, okay, yeah, I gotta use that later on as well. I won't spoil anything. If you haven't read it, link in the description below. At some point early on in the story, there is a glass table. Characters kind of make fun of the table. It's really weird. I think it's funny. The glass table was just a one-off thing that I was writing about, and I thought, hey, this makes sense for the characters to be talking about right now, to be making fun of this thing. I did not expect that the glass table would return. But at some point, I was writing, and I was like, it actually makes sense, since I mentioned the glass table before, to talk about it again, to make it come back. It was like basically a character from the Marvel universe returning in a random movie that nobody was expecting. Yes, I did just compare my novel to a Marvel movie. Now, with the 3rd book, there is another thing. I barely planned for that again, like barely. Mostly because I struggled a lot with that story. Let me put that first. It is a time loop story, and I'll announce the title very soon, and I'll give you a more detailed synopsis. I think is the word, of what it's about. It was a very difficult story to write. I've tried to write it several times, and I eventually figured it out. It never really changed. The story never really changed, because I knew from the start where I wanted things to go, how I wanted it to end. The actual story of it just felt natural to me, so I kinda just wrote. I didn't need to figure out an outline or anything, because as I was going, it just felt right. And that's good too. It is okay to just write. You do not need to plan everything. However, I've been thinking about my next book, right? And I've talked about this many times. I have figured out what I want to write. There are several options, but I have figured out what it is, what story I'm actually going with. But both ideas that seemed very appealing to me, including the one that I went with, require a lot of planning. I want to write, I want to just go at it, I want to make this story, but I can't because I need to figure out how the story actually goes. I feel like both stories are way more delicate. One of the stories is a fantasy story. It's the one that I have wanted to write for so many years, but I feel like I'm not quite there yet. I still have so much planning to do, and to be honest, I kinda just wanna write, and I have to figure out that whole story, figure out the characters way more before I can get to that. But that one requires so much thinking, so much planning, that I'm just like, I won't yet. I'll have to do that on the side, because I also just want to write books, and with the fantasy story, I'm kind of scared that I'll mess it up, which is so weird because it's my story. I can just continue. You know, I can retry so many times. I have been retrying this for years and years. So that one requires a lot of planning, but the story that I decided to go with for now also requires a lot of planning. So this next story that I am going to be writing, and actually I already wrote part of the first chapter for, I think I'm gonna start it over because I had an idea of telling it better and faster. I'll talk about that another day. The thing is that this story, it was a horror story at first, and it is now a thriller, and I think that the character development, the character's growth, is very important in the story, because it is pretty broad. There is a thing that is happening right now, and there is things that are happening outside of that that are actually the main focus. It's gonna be easier if I just tell you. I'm combining basically, like, it's kind of like a crime thriller. Imagine like The Mentalist, something like that. The crime story, there is a thing going on right now, like a case or cases that the main character has to work on, but there's also this other case that he actually wants and needs to work on. So I need to plan properly how he deals with that, and what is the timeline there to keep it interesting, and to always make sure that the reader's mind is on that main case and not just the one that he's working on right now, which is still gonna be relevant, but also it shouldn't be the main focus. I don't know if any of this is making sense. Then another thing is that another character, which is currently the character with the most development so far, that story is also very important to plan properly. There are multiple perspectives, there are multiple point of views, so I need to figure out what is happening and when is it happening and to whom is it happening. There is so much planning to do for this one, and I just want to write. But I gotta figure it out. I gotta know how this story goes so that I can tell it in the best way possible. I know my characters for the most part already. I know most of the characters. There are some characters I still need to figure out, because usually in my stories, as I have with these two and the other one that I am yet to release, there aren't that many characters. This new idea has way more characters and people that actually I think should feel real and not just side characters for the sake of pushing the plot. So, planning stories is hard, for sure, but it's also gonna be exciting. I'm sure that I can do it. It's gonna be great. I think maybe I should do like vlog type stuff for making this project, if you guys are interested in that. And I also want to do videos on talking about that story that I have finished but haven't released yet. So, let me know what you guys want to see. This was good. I'll see you all next time. Alright, subscribe. Bye.